So today we're going to get into section 3 of chapter 7, which is over the Pythagorean Theorem. This is going to use the ideas that we learned in chapter 1 or section 1 of this chapter with square roots. That's going to be important in the Pythagorean Theorem. It kind of has to do a little bit with chapter 2 as well, with geometry type stuff, and I'll explain what that means. First, we obviously need to know what the Pythagorean Theorem is. The Pythagorean Theorem will be used quite a bit, especially as you move forward in math, especially once you get to geometry and that type of stuff. It says the Pythagorean Theorem has to do with right triangles. It has to be a right triangle. In any right triangle, the sum of the squares of the lengths of the legs is equal to the square of the length of the hypotenuse. This right here is your equation for basically what all that means. So this is the main thing you need to know. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay, so the Pythagorean Theorem, the right triangles are made up of two main things, the legs and the hypotenuse. So your legs are the two sides that form the right triangle, which are A and B. So A and B are always your legs of the right triangle. And they're always the two shorter sides. So then that leads you to your hypotenuse is the side opposite of the right angle. So wherever that right angle is in that right triangle, on the opposite side is your hypotenuse, and that's your C. So this is always your hypotenuse in the equation. That's always the longest side. So whatever the longest side of that right triangle is your hypotenuse, or your C. Okay, so that is your definitions. I know those are all new. Probably haven't heard of those, which is fine, but this is like a visual representation of what that all meant. Okay, so all that was probably confusing. Here's a visual representation of it. You have your legs, which are the two sides connected to the right angle. Okay, so both legs are always connected to that right angle right here. So here's your right angle, the 90 degrees. Leg is A, one of the legs is A, one of the legs is B. Those can be interchanged. It doesn't matter which is A, which is B, because sometimes it won't tell you, which is fine. Just know that the legs are the ones attached to the right angle. The side that's opposite or straight across from that right angle is your C, or your hypotenuse. So this side right here, the longest side, is your C. That's your hypotenuse. Okay, so make sure, this is the main thing I want to make sure you understand. This is what it looks like with the visual representation of that. So this is just an overview of what we're going to be doing in this section. It says in this section you'll be asked to find missing sides of a right triangle. So basically you're going to be given two of the sides, and they want you to find that third side of a right triangle. And you're going to use the Pythagorean Theorem to do that, which is A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So this right here you have to memorize. You need to memorize that equation because that is your Pythagorean Theorem that you need to use. It says you will plug in the side you are given and solve for the missing side. So, just like we've been talking about all year, everything goes back to chapter 1. You're solving for a variable. You're trying to get a variable by itself. And that's what we're going to be doing in this section as well. Okay, so make sure you understand how that's done. So, let's go ahead and look at an example. It says, find the missing length of the triangle. So, they give us this, and they want us to find that. So, if you think about it, this is what they want us to find. But, again, you want to go back to the definition of like what this is going to look like and what the right triangle is. This and this are both connected to your right angle. So this is a leg, this is a leg. That means that this is your hypotenuse. It's the opposite of the right angle, so that's your hypotenuse. So we're trying to find C right now. That's what we're trying to find, is the letter C. So in the Pythagorean Theorem, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. We're trying to find C. So what we have to do is we plug in the information we're given. We're given A and B. Again, it doesn't matter which one you make A, which one you make B. You just have to understand these are both A and B. So we're going to plug each of those in. So you could have labeled these if you want. So like A, B, C. We're trying to find C. So I'm going to plug in 5 for A. So it's going to be 5 squared plus b is 12 squared equals c squared. We don't know what c is yet, so that's what we're trying to find. So now we're going to just simplify this left side first. So 5 squared, remember, the power of 2 stands for, this is how many times you multiply the base by itself. So we are multiplying 5 by itself twice. So 5 times 5. So 5 times 5 is 25. Plus, same thing with this. 12 times 12 is 144. And that still equals c squared. Okay, so after this, we have to add these together. 25 plus 144 is 169. And that equals c squared. Okay, so we're almost done to find c, but we have to get c by itself. So we have to get rid of this power of 2. So this goes back to what we talked about in section 1. The opposite operation of something to the second power is to take its square root. Make sure you remember that. So in order to cancel that second power out, I have to take the square root of the right side and the square root of the left side, because that will make that power of 2 and the square root cancel out, leaving me with c, which is what I want. And then I just have to find the square root of 169, which you can just plug in your calculator, and you'll find out the square root of 169 is 13. So that means your missing side would be 13, and the unit is meters. So 13 meters would be your answer. Okay, so that is what we're doing in this section. We're trying to find a missing side using the Pythagorean Theorem. Okay, so hopefully that made sense. Well, I'm going to have you try one on your own, like this. So just because it's flipped, don't let that throw you off. Okay, just because it's turned downward, you're still looking where that right angle is. So pause the video, try this on your own. Hopefully you've tried it and came back. So, again, we're using this we're using the Pythagorean Theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, that's what we're using. So, again, we have to think about what we're given. Here's our right angle. The two sides connected to that right angle are right here. Those are my A and B. So, that's my A, that's my B. That means the missing side we're trying to find is C again. So we're trying to find C again. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to plug in for A and B. 15 goes in for A, and it's squared, plus 8 goes in for B, and it's squared, equals C squared, because we don't know what C is yet, so we leave that as C. So we're following the same pattern. We're going to simplify each of these. 15 squared, or 15 times itself, would be 225, plus 8 times itself would be 64, equals C squared. Okay? Now we have to add these together. 225 plus 64 will give you 289, and that equals C squared. And again, once you get to this last step, it's very important to remember, if I'm trying to get C by itself and it's to the power of 2, the opposite of taking something to the power of 2 is to take its square root. So that's what you have to do to both sides to get rid of that power of 2. So square root there, those cancel, leaving me with C on the left side, or on the right side, which is what we want. We need C by itself. And then the square root of 289 would be 17. Okay, and you can just plug that in your calculator to get it. So that means our missing side here would be 17 feet. 17 feet would be your missing side. So that's all you're doing here is we're trying to plug in the two sides we're given into the Pythagorean Theorem, and then after that, we're just solving for that missing variable by simplifying. So let's look at another example. So again, we're using this equation, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And again, first thing you should do is locate which sides are where. So these two sides that are connected to my right angle, those are my a and b. So you'll see something here. This is our first problem where we have to solve for something other than c. We have to solve for one of the legs. So this is an a and b, so this will be my a, this will be my b, and then the side opposite of the right angle is my c. So now we are given b and c, and we have to find a. Okay, but we're going to do it the same way. We're going to plug in what we know and then solve for a. So what we know is we don't know a, so I'm going to bring down a squared, plus b is 15, so that would be 15 squared, equals my c, which is 39, so it equals 39 squared. Okay, we're still plugging in to the particular spots on those. Okay, so once we do that, bring a calculator over just in case we need it. Once we do that, we're still going to simplify the things that are to the power of 2 before we do anything. So I'm going to simplify the things I can. So I'm going to bring down the a squared plus 15 to the second power, or 15 times 15 will be 225, equals 39 to the second power would be 1521, or 1521. So now we reach a point where we're a little different than we have been before, but hopefully we remember from chapter 1 how to do this. If we're trying to solve for a, remember we need to get a by itself, meaning it should be the only thing on its side of the equal sign. So to do that, we have to move this plus 225. So the opposite operation of that will be to subtract 225, and that will get it taken away from the left side because they will cancel. So then I can bring down my a squared, and then 1521 minus 225 will give us 1296. Okay? Now we're back to where we were before. We just have the a to the second power, so we need to get rid of that second power. So the opposite of something to the second power is to take the square root. Got to continue to remember that's the opposite. So we take the square root of both sides, the second power and the square root cancel, bring down a, and a equals the square root of 1296 would be 36. So that means our missing side is 36 feet. Okay, so that is our missing side for that problem. So those are done the same way. We just have to make sure we plug into the correct spots in the Pythagorean Theorem, and then we're just solving for our missing variable. So we got one more. So again, whenever you're doing these types of problems, first thing you should write down is your Pythagorean Theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. After you write that down, you need to label your parts. Okay, first thing, again, I locate that right angle. Make sure you know where that right angle is. The sides connected to it are your legs. So that means this is A and B right here. So that's what I'm going to start by labeling. A, B, so the side opposite is your C. Okay, once we label, we can just plug straight in. We'll have 16 in for A. And again, that's still squared. And make sure you understand this could be A or B. Like you could put B here and A here. That's not going to make a difference. So we have A squared is now 16 squared plus, we don't know B yet, so that's B squared, equals, our C is 34. So 34 gets plugged in for C, and it is squared. So we simplified the powers of 2. So 16 to the second power is 256 plus b squared, because we don't know it yet. And then 34 to the second power is 1,156. So once we simplify that, that is where we are to so far. So again, like we keep running into, if we're trying to solve for a variable, you need to get that variable by itself. So you need to move what's on its side to the other side. So right now we have a positive 256 on this side, so we have to subtract 256 from both sides. When we do that, 256 cancels with minus 256, so I bring down b squared equals 1,156 minus 256 would give me 900. So, last step, we have b to the power of 2. So to cancel out that power of 2, we take the square root of the left side, square root of the right side. Those cancel, leaving me with b, and the square root of 900 would be 30. So your final answer here would be the leg B is 30 yards. So the leg B is 30 yards. Okay, so that's basically what we're going over. That's basically what you're using the Pythagorean Theorem for, is just finding a missing side in a right triangle. Again, it has to be a right triangle in order to do that. So let's look at one word problem as well, because sometimes you might be given word problems in this section. So we want to make sure we're familiar with them as well. This says, 2 window washers, Bill and Roger, lean a ladder against the side of a building so that Bill can wash a window while Roger holds the ladder. The top of the ladder reaches the window, which is 12 feet off the ground. The base of the ladder is 16 feet away from the building. How long is the ladder? So, obviously the best thing to do here would be just draw a picture. So, I've got a building. It says that they're going to lean the ladder against the building. So, we're leaning the ladder against the building. Like that. So there's my ladder, I lean it against the building. Because it says that Bill's going to wash the window. So here's Bill. Bill's washing the window. And again, you don't have to put the people in, it's just setting the whole problem up. And Roger's going to hold the ladder. Okay, so Roger's holding the ladder at the bottom, Bill's at the top. And it tells you, you got to think about what distances they give you. The top of the ladder reaches the window, which is 12 feet off the ground. So the top of the ladder, it says, is 12 feet off the ground. So that means this right here would be 12 feet. So there's your 12 feet. The base of the ladder, meaning the bottom, the base of the ladder is 16 feet away from the building. So here's the building, there's the base of the ladder. So that means this part down here would be 16 feet. So as you can see, this is the triangle we're looking at. And if you think, there's your right angle, okay, where the building and the ground meet, obviously that is a right angle, 90 degrees. So that is the right angle, and these are the two sides we're given. And it wants to know, how long is the ladder? Here's our ladder that we leaned against the building. So this is what we want to find. So once our picture's set up, we know we're going to be using the Pythagorean Theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And we have to think about what we're given. Here's our right angle. Remember, the two sides connected to that right angle are our legs, or our A and B. So we know 16 and 12 are our A and B. So that means we're trying to find C. That's our hypotenuse we're trying to find. So I'm going to plug in 16 and 12 for A and B. So 16 squared plus 12 squared equals RC squared. Okay, so that's where we're at so far. We're trying to find C in this problem. Once it's all set up, now the hard part's done. We're good now because we just have to do the math of it. We simplify 16 squared, which is 256, plus 12 squared, which is 144, equals C squared. We add these together. 256 plus 144 will give me 400, and that equals c squared. And we got one more step. If we need to get rid of the power of 2, the opposite operation of that would be the square root, and we do that on both sides. Power of 2 and square root cancel. Leave me with c, which is what we need, and the square root of 400 would be 20. So that means that our ladder is 20 feet long. So that's kind of a real world example of where the Pythagorean theorem could be used. You will run into word problems as well, so make sure you're familiar with those. But the main idea of this section is just knowing the Pythagorean theorem. You have to know the Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And then from there, you're using that to solve for missing sides. And again, to solve for missing sides, you plug in the sides you know, get that variable with the power of 2 by itself, and then once you have that by itself, you have to use square root on both sides to get your final answer. Okay? Hopefully you understand that. Hopefully that gave you a better understanding of Pythagorean theorem. Thanks for watching.